And I wanted to teach other mums and time poor women to be able to do the same, to take that pressure away, to enable them to not have to make those really hard decisions when their babies are so young.
Welcome to What If It All Works Out? My name is Sophie Callahan, and I started this podcast because I wanted to empower women to show up confidently and consistently online as themselves by sharing stories and examples of what things look like when they all work out. My career began in photography, and I am now a marketing and mindset coach for female entrepreneurs and the mum to two little girls. I teach you everything that I learned over 10 years in my business about content marketing and building the life of my dreams so that you can do the same. My guests here have inspiring stories to tell, knowledge for us to learn from, and really valuable experiences to share with us. So grab a cup of tea and get ready for conversations that will change your mindset, your business, and the way you show up in your life. When you first come across a little bit of Lottie on Instagram, you might think that she's just another parenting influencer with her funny videos, brand collaborations, and a very relatable account of motherhood. But Lottie Teideman is also a businesswoman. She's a podcast host, she runs a membership, she teaches other women to monetize their social media platforms, she's an illustrator and a digital product creator. Lottie started her journey as a bikini athlete, losing 5 stone to compete on stage and gain a strong following with her transformation photos. Her content then shifted to travel as she explored the world, but as she became a mother, she found herself in the role of a parenting influencer. Though she dislikes the term, Lottie has fully embraced this role and has gone on to create a successful podcast and book. What started as an unintentional path has now led her to become a prominent influencer across multiple platforms. In this episode, we discuss Lottie's experience with burnout and her strategies for avoiding it. She also shares how she built her social media presence to earn a good income and offers advice on how to monetize on social media. Lottie also shares her struggles with ADHD, but how it has helped her constantly come up with business ideas. Whether you're just starting out or have already built up a following, there's something for everyone in this podcast. Join the conversation and find out how you can make social media work for you with Lottie Teideman. Hi, Lottie. Welcome to What If It All Works Out?
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're very, very welcome. I'm very excited to have you on here. So just for full disclosure, Lottie is actually the reason that I am doing this podcast in the first place. It is all your fault.
But you're the reason that I have all of my other things. So we're just as bad as each other.
So I went on Lottie's podcast, Tits, Tums and All Things Mum, a little while ago, and she encouraged me to start a podcast. She was like, "It's so easy, just do it." So in turn, I encouraged her to start a membership and all kinds of other things.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? We're just egging each other on to do all these things.
To get more stressed out and have less time.
Yeah. But the podcast is so worth it. I love a podcast.
Yeah, me too. So can you kind of explain to me and to my audience how you got into everything you do now, how you, I guess, became, I know you hate the word, an influencer, how you grew your Instagram account in the beginning?
Yeah, so back at the beginning, believe it or not, I was a bikini athlete. You know, the people that get up on stage like covered in gravy, tan and pose and all of that. Well, it's not actually gravy, but it looks like gravy, you know, like the really dark tan. So I was one of them. And that's when I grew a lot of my following back then, because people love a transformation photo. So I lost 5 stone, got on stage, competed, I won. So it was like,
Oh, wow.
it was a big deal back then. So I got to about 10K back then. And then I went traveling, so it kind of morphed into travel content. And then I had children and it morphed into what it is today, which is I am a parenting influencer. Yes, I hate that word. I don't know why I still hate it, but I do. And yeah, it's just grown from there, and it's kind of morphed into a podcast and a book, which I'm still trying to get published, and all of these other things. And it's actually become more of me being an influencer. Whereas before it was never intentional. I was never, setting out to be an influencer. It just kind of happened. Whereas now that's kind of what I am, I suppose.
Yeah, and you've made a business out of it.
I have indeed. I earn the majority of my income from my social media, from my parenting page now, which is amazing.
It is, yeah. And how, if someone was starting from the very bottom, how would
Mhm.
you advise them to grow an Instagram account? I know you didn't do it with the intention of
Mm,
growing it to what it is now, but
yeah.
if you were to advise people.
Yeah, so I kind of did it by fluke the first time round, with the fitness stuff, just by posting photos. I didn't do any of the things that I do now back then. It just happened, which is annoying because telling people that it just happened, they're probably like, oh, shut up. But if I could start again now, there are so many different things that I would do because actually, the followers that I gained back then are no longer interested in my content because the majority of them are still in the fitness world. They're still competing. They're still, gym bunnies. They don't have children. So they don't want to hear about me breastfeeding my kids and all of that stuff. So actually, they're probably what I call ghost followers. They follow me, they're a number, but they're not engaging in any of my content. So if I could start again, I would pick a niche and stick to that niche and start from the very beginning with that niche. And one of the biggest things that I say is that social media is social. And I think one of the biggest things that people think is that they can just post content and it will just fly and they'll gain loads of followers and become an influencer. But actually you need to engage with your audience, you need to nurture your audience, you need to nurture potential other audience people that could come towards you, and it's about socializing. It's not just about posting, sadly, anymore. I think
Yeah.
back in the day, back when I started, it probably was more about just posting, but now it's not. There are so many different things that you kind of need to do. But definitely find your niche, stick to it, do
Mhm.
all of the research around that niche and find out what your target audience is, kind of write a profile for your ideal target audience person. So this is what I get all of my members to do, is like have a picture in their head of a person that they are getting all their content to aim towards. So, their age, what they like, what kind of job status they have, all of these different things. And when they're creating their content, just aim it towards them, because then they're always going to be catering for their target audience rather than me catering for, fitness, travel, everything that I've done in my influencer life.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And you just mentioned membership. So
Mm.
you have the Mumfluencer Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tell us about that and what that offers and who that's for.
Yeah, so the Mumfluencer Academy is basically a one-stop shop for mums and time poor women to come and monetize and thrive on their social media. The reason I started this is because when I became a mum, I had the really difficult decision of, should I go back to work? Should I stay at home? Should I pay someone else to look after my children and then be poor because I'm forking out ridiculous amounts on childcare?
Yeah.
And it was a really difficult decision. Honestly, childcare is the bane of my life. And it's really sad that people have to make that decision now. And I hated the fact that I had to make that decision. So I decided not to make that decision. I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not making this decision. So I went back to work part time. So I work one day and one night a week. So actually, I'm only away from my kids one day because, as you know, on my night shift, which was last night, I just don't sleep. I just go to work and just don't sleep and carry on life as normal on the Monday.
Lottie's very
Um,
tired right now.
I'm so tired, but it's worth it because I've got to go to the fun fair today with my kids, and like time for me with my children is precious. And I hated the fact that money and life was taking that decision away from me. And I wanted to be with my kids. So
Mhm.
I went back part time and I made the decision to be part time with the aim to kind of eventually leave. And I'm still not quite there yet, but hopefully will be soon. And I built up my Instagram and built it to a point where I'm now earning way more than a full-time income, but we've become comfortable with a nice
Yes.
life now with both of my incomes. So now we're like, do I leave or do I just keep, burning myself into the ground doing both? So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I wanted to teach other mums and time poor women to be able to do the same, to take that pressure away, to enable them to not have to make those really hard decisions when their babies are so young. So that's what I do. In the Mumfluencer Academy, I teach mums in a really affordable way through a membership and through courses and coaching how to earn money and how to thrive on their social media. And you can come to the Mumfluencer Academy for all other services as well, like social media management, web design, branding, everything that you could possibly need to monetize your social media.
Amazing. And so, along that same vein, what would be some of your advice? Could you, if someone's kind of sitting there now and they're thinking, this is me, Lottie is talking about
Mm.
me, I don't want to go back to work. I have an Instagram following, or even if you are, before you have an Instagram following, I think I could
Mm.
do this. I think I can monetize my social media. What would be your advice for those people? How would they start?
So, the biggest thing you need to do to begin with is focus on growing your following. You can start to earn money from your social media at actually quite a low following. I think people look at the likes of, like Molly May with her millions of followers and they think that they need to be at those levels before they can monetize. But actually, I started earning money at about 3K. So, that's not a huge amount. You can
No.
build up to that fairly easily. So if you're below that amount, your focus should be trying to kind of get to 3K. And then once you get there, you need to try and split your focus. So focusing on still trying to grow your social media, nurturing your community, nurturing your audience, but also then turning part of your focus onto how you can monetize it. And there are so many different avenues that you can use to monetize social media these days. I feel like the pandemic has got a lot to answer for when it comes to this because a lot of people kind of flocked to social media to earn money because that's all they could do. So
Yeah.
you can become an influencer, you can start a product business or a digital product business, you can become an online coach. There are so many different avenues that you can go down. But yeah, focus firstly on getting above 3K and then just decide on which avenue that you want to go down to monetize your social media and focus on that alongside maintaining nurturing your audience.
Excellent, amazing. And I know that there are a lot of free services at the moment that people
Mm.
can kind of tap into in the Mumfluence Academy before they commit to that payment. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about those? What is it you offer?
Yeah, definitely. So we first of all, the Instagram page is a great kind of place to head because I just post loads of free content on there on how to grow your social media, how to monetize it. There's also a newsletter that's got loads of free information on as well. So you can head to there first. Then I do lives and Zoom webinars that are around different topics. So that I think you were in the last one, weren't you?
Yes, I
one
was,
of
yes.
one of them, yeah. A Zoom webinar about all the different things, ways you can monetize. I've got one coming up in May, no, July, the July mid. What have I called it? I've called it something really good, and I was impressed with it. Was it mid year money? I can't remember now. It sounds really good. I'm going to
I'll put it in
advertise
the
it
show
soon.
notes.
But yeah, I do loads of free stuff regularly on there. Then you can also have a free, no obligation call with our social media manager to kind of talk about what options might work for you and what you kind of might need help with on your social media. And if you have over 3,000 followers on social media and you're thinking of becoming an influencer and doing brand partnerships, we have a brand outreach program which you can sign up for free, and you get allocated to a brand outreach specialist who will go and basically find your paid brand work for you so that it takes out the stress and you can focus on just growing your following.
Amazing. I love a freebie.
I
I love being
know, I
able to offer
know.
people a freebie so that they can kind of see what
Yeah.
they're getting. So that's awesome.
But that's the
So
whole point. Like I
yeah,
didn't want mums to be able to, because money's tight for mums these days, like the cost of living and childcare and everything. I didn't want people to just not be able to do it because they couldn't afford it. So I wanted to have various options, but then there is the paid stuff, even though it is still very cheap, but it is,
yeah, it's really
still
affordable.
paid. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And I love the fact that you've got different levels of involvement as well. So people can kind of choose where it is that they fit and what suits them.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot going on. What-
Do I? I didn't notice.
You do. Yeah, you do. You're a busy girl. So,
Yeah.
how do you find juggling? We've talked about it a bit, but juggling kids and being self-employed. Um,
Do you want the honest version?
I always want the honest version.
Oh God. I'm not gonna lie, I burn out regularly, and I think I mean it's probably to do with like the cycle and everything as well, but I think at least once a month I'm like, right, I've had enough. I need a break. I need to stop. So I do regularly take breaks to focus on myself, to hit the reset button, have an entire day where I'm not picking up my phone. I'm not doing any work. I'm just kind of focusing on, spending time with my kids, self-care, all of that stuff. But I think for me, it's just about, I do a lot of time blocking and a lot of, looking at what my week and looking at what I'm supposed to be doing. What I find as a mum is that if I'm splitting my focus, that's when I get stressed. So if I'm trying
Same.
to look after the kids and also do some work, I get really, really stressed. So I've tried to focus on one thing at a time. So when I'm with the kids, I'm present with the kids. I am not on my phone. I'm not trying to do, something else. So I'm with them. So like today we've been to the fun fair and I've been with them. I've not been on my phone. But then the minute they're asleep, I'm like, now it's work mode. So I've come out, I've started doing some work, I've jumped on this call.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing to do, is just block out your time and just know what you're doing with each hour and stick to that one thing instead of trying to do so many things at once. And then I
Yes.
use lists to prioritize, and I'll look at my list, I'll see what the most important thing is, like based on deadlines. So like if I've got a brand partnership that's due to be posted tomorrow, I'll do that tonight, and I'll just kind of work my way through based on priorities, and that's it. But I'm not saying this saying that it's easy, because it's really not, and I
No.
do burn out regularly. And this is one kind of misconception, I think, of having a business. I think a lot of people think that once you quit or reduce your hours in employment, that you're kind of living the high life. You're at home, you're with the kids, you're living your best life. But actually, I feel like I work more now than I did when I was in work, but I just get to choose my hours now. So instead of having to work in the day when I'm wanting to spend time with my kids, I'm actually working from when they're in bed right up until like midnight, 1 o'clock. So
Yeah.
it's hard, but it means that I get to choose when I work.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with everything
Mm,
you've said. I think the time blocking and the kind of
mm,
separating parenting and work life is absolutely
hmm.
huge. Because otherwise, if I try and work with my kids around, my kids are going to get it in the neck because
Yeah.
bless them, it's not their fault, but they won't let me work and then I get
Yeah.
frustrated. So I think
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. Um,
Hmm.
and the other thing you mentioned there is, having lists and trying not to do too many things at once. You are very open about having ADHD.
Hmm.
How does that affect your business?
Do you know? Sometimes I love my ADHD because I believe that it truly is my superpower. I don't think I'd be doing all the things that I do now if I didn't have ADHD. And I think that my brain comes up with like a new business idea every like zero point 0.3 seconds. So it's like constantly coming up with all these ideas, and that's amazing. And that has meant that I've got all of these things going on, but it does mean that I do end up with a lot on my plate and I'm spinning a lot of plates. And, 9 times out of 10, I'm dropping the plates and smashing them everywhere because it feels like I've got my eggs in so many baskets and I just don't know what is going on half the time. And I get frustrated with myself because, I've got my main influencer page, I've got my Mumfluencer Academy page and my membership and all of that I need to look after. And I've got my podcast. So sometimes I do feel like I'm putting all of my time into these things, but none of them are doing as well as I'd like them to do because I'm splitting my attention three ways. Um, but then I think that's also part of the ADHD is that I am very self-critical and I'm actually doing okay in all three of the areas, but I always strive to be better and the best. And, I look at other people's pages and I'm like, oh, but that person's got 100,000 followers and I've only got 30. And like this person's earning this much a month and I'm only earning this much. And that's what I find difficult. But actually, I am doing a lot. And I think ADHD has a lot to answer for. But having said that, I feel like a lot of female entrepreneurs probably do have ADHD because it's in our nature to, strive for all of these businesses and to do well in life. Everyone has it differently, of course, and some
Yeah.
people really struggle in business. But actually, the type of ADHD that I've got is that I need to be running at 110 miles an hour at all times with no stopping
Until you burn out.
until I burn out. And then I'm like, I take a couple of days off to reset. And I'm like, right, I'm not going to do this again. And then what do I do? Just go again. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like a constant cycle. You'd think I'd learn by now, but I'm never going to learn. I'm just
No.
going to accept that.
Did you get diagnosed as a child or as an adult?
I'm not diagnosed. I'm
Oh, you're not.
self-diagnosed. So I'm not. No. So basically I have been to the GP, they've done the assessment. They've said you've got ADHD. I'm on medication for it as well. I don't have a diagnosis. I'm on the waiting list. I have been on the waiting list for about a year and a half now. It's 2 to 3
Wow.
years on the waiting list. But my psychologist and my GP, they're like, you've got ADHD. It's just a case of waiting for a formal diagnosis for them to tell
Yeah.
me, yeah, you've got it. I'm like, yeah, I know I've got it. Thanks for letting me know.
Glad I
Um,
waited 2 years for that.
yeah, I know, but like I know I've got it. The only one that I don't know whether I have is they think I've got ASD as well. And I'm not so sure about that one. So that's one that I'm waiting to be assessed for before I kind of,
Yeah.
think, yeah, maybe I've got that as well. But ADHD, I tick every box. Yeah, I've accepted it now.
Fair enough. I mean, it sounds like you've got as good as a diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, they gave me the medication just because I was really struggling with it, and it's massively helped. And I think that's also another thing that's helped with kind of getting getting control of everything and
Yeah.
being able to do business because before it just felt like everything was everywhere and I had no idea what was going on. And I was losing things, I was forgetting things, missing client appointments, but now it's like everything's in order. So it's good.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think, there seems to be an increasing number of people who are kind of coming out and being diagnosed with things like
Mm,
ADHD and, other neurodivergence. Is that what they're called?
mm.
And
Yeah.
and I think it used to be such a big stigma, didn't it? Whereas now
Yeah.
it seems to be less so. And
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, if you are understanding yourself better and if you know how to
Mm.
manage whatever it is you're struggling with, that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've struggled through my whole life up until now, not knowing why I was so different, not knowing why, like, I felt like a bit of a weirdo at school, and like why I struggled massively with, academic stuff and all of that. And it's almost like when I started to relate to all of the social media stuff that was going around about ADHD in women, adults, I was like, oh, that's me. That's
Yeah,
why I'm like this. But there's so much research coming out now about why women are so different to men being diagnosed, because they tend to get diagnosed in childhood. Boys
yes,
are the typical, air quotes ADHD, where they're like the disruptive child, all of that stuff. But women tend to mask it, and it's in their brains rather than outwardly having ADHD. And there's so much research about this recently, and I'm that's probably why a lot of women are now being diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood, because they're just hearing about all of this stuff and they're like, oh my god, that
yeah,
is me. And
yeah.
finally we can actually relate to some of this and be like, that's why I've struggled for so long.
Yeah, and I think I know that one of the things with women or with girls is that they mask a lot more, don't they? So they cover it
Yeah,
up. Whereas
yeah,
when you're an adult and you're seeing yourself in this content that people are putting on social media, you're self-diagnosing. So,
yeah,
because we know what's going on in our brain, but if we're masking, no
yeah,
one else knows. And so I think
exactly,
that's
yeah,
probably why as adults we're like, hang on, that's me. Whereas when we're kids, people
yeah.
can't see that in us.
Exactly. I always found it bizarre when I asked people what they were thinking and they were just like, nothing. I was like, what?
You don't have an inner
What?
monologue.
You don't have things going on in your brain? I was like, I don't think I've ever had a quiet brain. Even like when I'm sleeping, it's going mental. And like
Same.
one of the things with ADHD is when you close your eyes, it's never dark. It's just there's always
Oh,
pictures going on. And like that's another thing that I found baffling, is that I didn't know that that wasn't normal, and
yeah.
that's an ADHD thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I see a lot of the ADHD traits in my daughter as well. So now I'm starting to realize that she's probably got it as well. And
Yeah.
hopefully, me actually being a bit more aware and knowing all of this stuff will help me to help her as well.
Absolutely. So I actually see a lot
Yeah.
in my daughter, and
Yeah.
from researching for her, I have
Mm.
actually realized that I think I probably have it. So it's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I was so interested to talk to you about this. And I
Yeah.
can now see, having done all this research, how that has impacted the way that I've run my businesses. And, the reason I'm so like obsessive when I have
Mm.
an idea. And I think you've seen that
Yeah.
in yourself as well. And when
Yeah.
I was on maternity leave, my husband would be like, look, just chill out. You don't have to work. It's fine. And I'd be like, my brain won't switch off. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can do.
There's no off switch on me. There is not.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a lot of people I've spoken to have actually said that the only reason they found out that they probably had it is through looking into it for their kids.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it, that that
It
comes
is. Yeah.
out. But I
Yeah.
see
Really
I see
interesting.
my daughter hyper focus on things all the time, and I'm like, there she goes. She's
Yeah.
doing it again. And I'm like, I know what she's doing because I do it too. Like I'll get an idea and I'm just like blinkers on, and like that's all that matters to me right now. And I see her doing it and I know exactly what's going on in her brain. And it's just really interesting to see it happening. But back then when we were kids, we were probably the same, but nobody knew why we were
No.
obsessing about whatever it was.
Yeah, I was just like labeled disorganized and,
Mm,
a bit naughty. Like I didn't ever do my homework and things like that. And
yeah,
genuinely, I would go home every single day. So you would think I would learn. And I would just forget I
yeah,
had homework until I walked
yeah,
into school the next day and I'd be like, oh shit, I haven't done
yeah.
it again. And,
Yeah, but it's the whole
yeah,
out of sight, out of mind thing in
yeah,
ADHD, which that I really struggle with that thing, because I lose everything. Like if it's not
mm.
out on a surface, it's lost. I don't know where it is. I don't like I'll buy Christmas presents early in the year, put them somewhere. Once I can't see them, they no longer exist. And it's the same with friendships as well. Like if I can't see a visual reminder of my friends or something, or them messaging me, it sounds horrible. It sounds really bad, but to me, they no longer exist because once they're honestly, it's such a weird thing. Like, I will not remember them. I will not remember to message them unless something reminds me to message them. I had to set up reminders on my phone to remember to message my friends because my brain doesn't compute that they still exist if I don't have a reminder in some way that they do, which is so weird.
Yeah, no, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. I feel like I need to come back and do another episode when I've been diagnosed, when I've been to the doctors, because the more I speak to people about this, the more I
Yeah.
can relate. And I feel like there's so many people who, like you say, it kind of lends itself to running a business, doesn't it? Because it's an
Yeah.
active mind, it's a drive,
Hmm.
it's like a singular focus, and
Yeah.
um, which are
Yeah,
all really
it
good
is.
traits of a business owner.
Yeah, but then yeah, some parts of it I do find really difficult, like the when you kind of lose your interest for a little bit, which you will do with a business because it
Mhm.
comes in ebbs and flows, and when you lose that initial hyper focus, that initial interest, it's so hard to then pique your interest back into it again to then just be like, come on, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. So that's happened with my podcast before. Back in 2021, I lost interest and I was like, oh, I've just stopped recording episodes, and then it just fizzled out for a little bit, and I was like, okay, I need to get it back. And now I'm like, right, I'm not letting that happen again, and I will not because my podcast is my baby.
Mhm.
But it's really difficult to maintain that focus all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I
Mm.
agree. Speaking of the podcast, it was
Mm.
up for some awards recently, right? You
It
were
was,
nominated.
yeah. I was nominated for 3 categories in the Glow Mama Awards, which was amazing. And it was
That's incredible.
amazing to go to the event as well. Like, what a group of like, amazing, ambitious, driven women. I just felt like I walked in the room and I was like, wow, the vibe in here is so cool. Because they're just all so like inspirational women in there. So you had people who had started business for like women with domestic violence, all sorts of different things for like Black women's rights, maternal mental health, like so many different things. And I was like, this room is just incredible. And to be there as a nominee, I was like, wow, holy shit, this is amazing.
It was
So
really cool watching all of the stories and the behind the
yeah,
scenes stuff as you were doing it. Yeah, really cool.
yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
So talking about everything that's going on and running businesses and all of that, you've just started building a team for the Mumfluencer Academy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have.
So let's talk a little bit about that because I think, a lot of my listeners are like solopreneurs, if you want to call them that.
Mm,
They're one man
mm,
bands, one woman bands, they're working on their own. And I think
mm,
a lot of people would like to start that process of kind of delegating tasks to other people, but don't really know where to start, how to
mm.
know they're ready. So how did you go about that?
So the reason this came about was I was reading a book called Money, a Love Story, and it's a book about she's writing it down.
Just writing it down.
It's a book about becoming financially free, financial time freedom, all of that. And it literally opened my eyes to the world of business and the world of money. And she talks in the book about different types of income, and one of them was leveraged income, and there was also the type of income that you'd get through just standard employment, which is linear. And it basically talks about the fact that there's only a certain amount of hours in a day and there's only one of you. So you could go to work. So my day job, nursing, I could go to work for my 13-hour shift. I'm only going to ever earn what I earn in an hour, and that's it. Done. And then I've got to sleep at some point. So I've then got to sleep. So there's a cap on what I can earn. And what this book talked about was the fact that we need to remove that cap. And in order to remove that cap, we need to create leveraged income. So it's income that is no longer proportionate to the amount of time you're putting into it. So you could put, a week into designing an online course and you pop it online. And other than a bit of marketing, it's there to sell to multiple people and you can get multiple returns on it. So you've got courses, you've got other types of passive income like investment, property investment, all of those types of things. You've got memberships because you can have multiple members for the same amount of work because you're only going to be putting in the same amount of content. And then actually being an influencer and doing brand partnerships is still linear income because there's only a certain amount of hours in a week. So there's only a certain amount of brand partnerships you can do in a week. And yes, it's way better pay than nursing, but there's still only a certain amount that I can earn from being an influencer. So it got me thinking about how can I make my income more leveraged because little old me has only got a certain amount of hours in a day to earn money, and my goal is financial freedom, isn't it for everyone?
Yes.
Um so I created the membership. So I people pay 5, 7 or £25 a month to join the membership on the different tiers, and I can have multiple people in there and I'm creating the same amount of content. I've created courses and they're online, people can buy them. But then doing all of this work has now taken up all of my time. So I was
Hmm.
like, well, now what do I do? Where do I go from here? So I was looking into like business models and things like that. And I looked into a business model about white labeling people to join your team. And to white label someone is basically to hire someone who is already trained in a particular area or a particular service to join your team, but to work as part of your team. So they'd be running their business on the side, but then they'd come into your team, provide their services as part of your team, and then they'd give you a percentage of the income that they get because you're doing the advertising for them. So that's how I started to build my team. I've now got a social media manager, a brand outreach specialist, a website designer, and I'm in the process of getting a couple of others as well who are basically providing their services for my clients, and I get a percentage of the income. So that's
Amazing.
income that I don't have to do any work for other than the marketing of those services on my website and, on my social media. So that's how that kind of business model came about.
Yeah, what an amazing way around things. That's so cool.
I'm sure it's the ADHD brain going off on one again. I was like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Just gone
That's
off on one.
really good though. What, how resourceful.
Yeah, because I think you need to be in business because like
Mhm.
especially as mums, your time is so limited and so precious that you need to get the most out of every single minute, and that's exactly what I was doing
Yeah.
with building that business model.
And how have you gone about finding those people?
So I actually already knew two of them. And I knew that they were good at what they did. So I already had one of them kind of within the membership that we're in, and she was really good at what she was doing really well with all the stuff in there. So I grabbed her. I had a brand outreach specialist who has been my personal assistant for about 3 years now, but she's now gone on maternity leave. She's having a baby in a week. So I was like, oh
Oh,
my God, I need to get a new brand outreach specialist. So I put a little thing on my stories about getting a new one, and so many people came forward for it. So like I did a little application form, but the one person that I found was someone that I'd spoken to regularly, and I was just like, yep, she's brilliant, she'd be great for it. She gave me a little bio about why she'd be good, and I was like, yep, perfect. And then the other social media manager that I got, I'd actually used her in the past. So I was like, I know
oh
she's good. I
wow.
know she's reliable. So yeah, that's how I got them. And then the web designer is my web designer. So she's designed both of my websites for me, which I love them so much. So I was like, I didn't even ask anyone else. I was like, you're coming on my team. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
I
kind
mean,
of,
so
sorry, yeah,
much
go
better
on.
to have people that you know and that you trust and
Yeah.
that you've worked with before.
Yeah. I was just glad that they said yes because I was like, I don't want anyone else because I know that you're good.
So, what has been your biggest struggle? We've
Hmm.
talked a lot about struggles, so
Yeah, I was
it
going to
might be
say
that we've already
just
covered. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just the juggle in general, like trying to make sure that everything is going well and not falling apart. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think probably being a mum is what makes that just that little bit harder because I also have these little people who are taking up a lot of my bandwidth and a lot of my, brain power. So yeah, just the juggle, I think.
Yeah, I would say the same. Yeah. And
Mm.
what has been your career highlight?
Oh my gosh, I don't.
No,
There's been so many. That sounds really big-headed, doesn't it?
not
No,
at all. We
I
have to
think
celebrate.
yeah, I think being nominated for the Glow Mum Awards was a big highlight, but also I got to the top four UK in the UK on the podcast charts as well. I was number four. This
Oh,
was
wow.
about a year ago now. I was up there with like Giovanna Fletcher and like who else? I can't remember who does it. It's blended. Kate Ferdinand, I think, does it. And I was
Wow.
like, oh my, got a screenshot of it. I printed it. I put it in a frame. I was like, this is amazing. I was only there for about 2 days, but it was
But
just
you were
like
there.
I was there, man. I
Yes.
was there. I was so happy. So those two things probably. The podcast is my baby. So anything with the podcast that does well, I'm just like, yes, I love
And
it.
your podcast is sponsored, right? So you earn income from your
Yes.
podcast?
I do indeed. I have six sponsors now. I have one permanent sponsor who's on every episode, and then I have the other five just kind of come in once or twice a month and advertise on several episodes. So, yeah, I'm very
Amazing.
lucky to have that
Yeah,
monetized as well.
definitely. You are like the monetizing queen.
That's why I did the Mumfluencer Academy. Get everyone monetizing out there.
Exactly. And I just have to, whilst we're on that subject, I know that at the beginning there was a lot of imposter syndrome there, as there is for all of
Mm.
us very often. And
Yes.
you were saying, "Oh, I don't know if I'm the person to do this," or but
Mm.
the amount of things that you have monetized, the amount of plates you have got spinning, I think proves that you are the right person for that.
Oh, thank you. I think it was just like I don't have the biggest following. I know how to monetize a following. I know how to earn a lot of money from that following, but I just don't have a big following, and that's what was kind of making me have that imposter syndrome is that how can I teach people to grow when I don't have the biggest following? But actually, I know what I need to do. I know what other people need to do. It's just me not having the time to do it and focusing my energy elsewhere on monetization rather than growth.
Which is what you're teaching people.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
But I do put little snippets of like growth in there as well, just
yeah,
because people need to be able to grow to monetize. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. And what has your win of the week been for this week? I mean, we're only on
It's
Monday, so let's
it's
do last
Monday.
week.
But actually, to be fair, I think it's a good one. So, as you know, yesterday I made the decision. So this came about because I won a Volvo XC90. It's you probably saw it on my stories.
I did, yeah.
It's £550 a month to lease it out. And I was like, cool, I can do that. As you do. Literally, if I want something, I get it. I go and get it.
Good.
So I was like, okay, so in that case, I need to be earning £550 a month from my membership because then I know that it's consistent because influencer work and brand partnerships is not consistent. So yesterday, I was like, okay, cool, let's go out, let's go get some more members. So I went out there, I went and did loads of messaging, did some posts, did some marketing, and I got six new members yesterday in one day. So I was like,
Amazing.
happy days. So that's my big win of the week is that whatever your business is, if you decide that you want to earn more money, you can go out there and do it.
Absolutely. And Lottie was messaging me saying, I want more members. And literally, so I'm in the Mumfluencer Academy Facebook group. And as she's saying this to me, about an hour later, I saw all her posts saying, welcome so and so, our new member. And I was like, she's just gone out and got more members because
Yeah,
that's what
I
she
did.
wanted to do today.
Just go and get.
Amazing.
There's going to be a point where I have to stop welcoming them individually into the group because it's like
Yes,
a
there
post
is.
every few minutes, like popping up. I'm like, sorry about that, guys.
I mean, great problem to have, right? I think people
Yes,
can take a
indeed
lot
it
from that.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think there's so many little kind of nuggets in there and like actionable takeaways that people can go away and work on if they are interested in monetizing, anything like that. Yeah, so thank you so much for your honesty and yeah, just sharing all of that with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been lovely.
You're welcome. You had to come on because it's all your fault. So
I know this is true. This is
I
true.
had to hold you accountable.
Definitely. But isn't it amazing anyway?
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So thank you for that push.
You're so welcome. I can't wait to listen to all your other episodes as well. I'm so glad you've done it. You had a
Yeah.
bit of imposter syndrome as well, didn't you? So,
Oh, absolutely. Don't we all get it? Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
we're both doing the things that we said we didn't want to do because we've both made each other do it. So,
I know.
there you
And
go.
how happy are we both about it?
Exactly. So, your listeners, this is your takeaway. The thing that you're wanting to do, but you're not doing it, go and do it, and then you'll be as happy as we are.
Excellent. And on that note, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And that is why I love social media so much. It brings friends like Lottie into my life. And whatever it is you do, whatever industry you're in, but I think especially if you are self-employed, it is so good to have people who understand your journey and the things that you're going through. And for me, Lottie is one of those people. And I hope that for those of you running small businesses right now, I can also be that for you too. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'm certain that it will have given you lots of food for thought when it comes to the different ways that you can make money online. As she mentioned, Lottie has leveraged so many different revenue streams through her social media presence. And I think so many people think that monetization has to be a really linear thing, and it absolutely doesn't. You can run a business and work on brand collaborations and write a book and create a digital product and a membership and all of the above, as long as you know who your target audience is and have the capacity to do the things that you are committing to. But what I want you to take away from today's episode is that there is no limit on the opportunities that are out there for all of you. So I will leave you with that thought today. Don't forget to share this episode on your Instagram stories and tag me and Lottie. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was from the conversation. It really means the world to me when you share this podcast. And I will see you next week for another episode of What If It All Works Out.